Norman Granz walked into Ella Fitzgerald's dressing room after her show at the Mocambo in Los Angeles with an idea that he knew would either make her career or end their professional relationship. It was 1955, and Ella was 38 years old, successful by any measure but not yet legendary. That was about to change. "I want you to record an album of Cole Porter songs," Norman said without preamble. "All Cole Porter, a complete songbook." Ella looked at him like he'd suggested she start performing opera. "Norman, I'm a jazz singer. I improvise, I scat, I don't do that." "That's exactly why you should do it," Norman said, "because nobody expects it. This is the story of the conversation that almost didn't happen, of the artistic risk that felt like artistic suicide, of how Ella Fitzgerald's refusal to record pop standards turned into the decision that would define her entire career, and of the moment she heard herself sing the first song and realized that everything she thought she knew about her own artistry was incomplete. Ella Fitzgerald in 1955 was successful but constrained. She'd been singing professionally for 20 years, had worked with all the greats, was respected in jazz circles as a serious improviser. But she wasn't selling records the way some of her contemporaries were. Frank Sinatra was dominating the charts with his concept albums. Nat King Cole was crossing over to mainstream success. Ella was stuck in a middle ground, too jazz for pop audiences, too commercial for jazz purists, making a living but not making history. Norman Granz had been managing her for several years and saw something others missed. Ella had the most perfect instrument in popular music: clarity, range, control that was almost superhuman. But she was using that instrument primarily for jazz improvisation, which limited her audience to people who appreciated technical mastery. What if she applied that perfect voice to the Great American Songbook, the standards that everyone knew, the Cole Porter, Rodgers and Hart, George Gershwin compositions that had become the foundation of American popular music? "You're wasting your voice on bebop," Norman said bluntly during that dressing room conversation. "I'm not saying stop doing it. I'm saying add something else, something that showcases what you can do with a melody." "I showcase what I can do every night on stage," Ella protested. "With improvisation, with scat, that's what makes me different." "Different doesn't pay the bills," Norman said, "and more importantly, different doesn't reach people who could love your voice if they heard it doing something familiar." Ella felt defensive, attacked, like Norman was asking her to compromise her artistic integrity for commercial success. "You want me to be a pop singer, to sing pretty songs for people who don't understand jazz." "I want you to be Ella Fitzgerald singing the best songs ever written," Norman corrected. "There's a difference." The conversation ended without resolution. Ella said she'd think about it. Norman knew that meant no, but was hoping she'd reconsider. Over the next several weeks, Ella couldn't stop thinking about the proposal, not because she was warming to it, but because it bothered her, made her question things she'd been certain about. She talked to Buddy Bregman, her musical director, about it. "Norman wants me to record Cole Porter standards, straight, no improvisation, just singing the songs." Buddy considered it. "Could be interesting, you've got the voice for it, but that's not what I do. I'm not a cabaret singer. I'm not Peggy Lee." "Why can't you be both?" Buddy asked. "Why can't you be the jazz singer who also happens to sing standards better than anyone else? Because jazz people will say I sold out. Maybe. Or maybe they'll hear you bring jazz sensibility to pop songs and realize you've expanded what the music can be." The seed of doubt or possibility had been planted. Ella started listening to Cole Porter songs differently, really listening. The melodies were beautiful, the lyrics were clever, sophisticated, and she'd been singing some of them for years in jazz arrangements, breaking them apart and reconstructing them. But what would they sound like sung straight, with the purity of the melody intact, with her voice serving the song rather than using the song as a vehicle for improvisation? She called Norman 3 weeks after their initial conversation. "One session, one song. If I hate it, we're done with this idea." "Deal," Norman said, trying not to show his excitement. They booked Capitol Studios in Los Angeles. Buddy Bregman arranged a simple orchestral setting, nothing too elaborate, just enough to support Ella's voice. Norman selected "I Get a Kick Out of You" as the test song. Classic Porter, sophisticated, a melody that required real singing. The day of the session, Ella arrived nervous in a way she rarely was before recording. This felt exposing, vulnerable. She was about to sing without the safety net of improvisation, without the ability to hide behind technical virtuosity. The orchestra ran through the arrangement once. It was beautiful, lush strings, subtle brass, creating space for a vocalist to inhabit. The kind of arrangement that required a singer to actually sing, not just perform. Buddy looked at Ella from the piano. Ready? No, Ella admitted, but let's do it anyway. The first take was technically perfect, every note in tune, every phrase shaped correctly. And completely lifeless, Ella was so focused on singing it right that she forgot to make it mean anything. That was. Buddy searched for diplomatic words. Very accurate. It was terrible, Ella said. I sounded like I was reading a phone book. You sounded scared, Norman said from the control booth, like you were afraid of the song. Stop trying to sing it correctly, just sing it. I don't know how to just sing something. I'm used to taking it apart, playing with it. So do that, Norman said, but do it with the melody intact. Find the jazz inside the structure instead of breaking the structure. Ella stared at the microphone for a long moment. She'd spent 20 years learning to improvise, to break songs apart, to reconstruct them in her own image. Now Norman was asking her to do something harder, find herself within someone else's composition. She nodded to Buddy. Again, this time something shifted. Ella stopped fighting the melody and started listening to it, really listening. And she realized Cole Porter had already put swing into the song. It was in the syncopation, in the way syllables landed on unexpected beats, in the architectural sophistication of the lyric. She didn't need to add jazz to it. She needed to reveal the jazz that was already there. Her voice relaxed, found the pocket between the written melody and where her instinct wanted to take it. She sang it straight, but with inflections, with subtle rhythmic variations, with dynamics that made the familiar song feel new. When the take ended, there was silence in the studio. Then Buddy started laughing. There it is. That's it. That's what this can be. Norman came out of the control booth, face showing rare emotion. Do you hear it now? Do you hear what this could be? Ella did. She just sung a Cole Porter standard the way only Ella Fitzgerald could sing it, respecting the composition while making it unmistakably hers. Not through wild improvisation, but through subtle sophistication that made the song more itself. Play it back, she said. They gathered in the control booth and listened. Ella heard herself singing with a purity and directness she rarely allowed. No technical fireworks, no showing off, just perfect tone serving a perfect melody. And it was beautiful in a way different from her jazz work, more accessible but no less artistic, commercial without being compromising. How many Cole Porter songs are there? Ella asked. Enough for several albums, Norman said carefully. Let's do one, a full album, all Cole Porter, see what happens. That decision, made in a Los Angeles recording studio in late 1955, changed the trajectory of Ella Fitzgerald's career and the nature of the Great American Songbook forever. Over the next several months, they recorded what would become Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook. 32 songs across 2 LPs. Buddy Bregman created arrangements that supported without overwhelming. Norman Granz oversaw every detail, making sure the production served Ella's voice, and Ella sang, song after song, discovering dimensions in her voice she'd never fully explored. The clarity that had always been there but was now showcased rather than decorated. The range that could move from intimate to soaring. The diction that made every lyric clear without sounding affected. The recording sessions were revelatory. Jazz musicians who came to visit were shocked at how different this was from Ella's usual work and how good it was. They expected to hear her selling out. Instead, they heard her expanding. It's still jazz, one trumpet player observed. Just jazz from the inside. She's swinging the song without changing it. When Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook was released in 1956, the response was overwhelming. Critics who dismissed Ella as just another jazz singer suddenly heard her as a serious artist. Pop audiences who'd never given her a chance discovered her through familiar songs. The album won a Grammy, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, introduced Ella Fitzgerald to audiences that would never have heard her bebop work. But more importantly, it proved that the Great American Songbook needed definitive versions, that these classic compositions deserved to be sung by the best voice in popular music with arrangements that served the songs rather than the singer's ego. Norman Granz immediately proposed continuing. Richard Rodgers and Lawrence Hart next, then Duke Ellington, then Irving Berlin, each songwriter getting their own dedicated album there. Catalog treated with respect and showcased by the finest vocalist alive. Ella, who'd initially resisted the entire concept, became enthusiastic. I never realized how much these songs have to say when you actually sing them instead of using them as jumping-off points. Over the next 8 years, Ella recorded 8 complete songbook albums: Cole Porter, Rodgers and Hart, Duke Ellington, Irving Berlin, George and Ira Gershwin, Harold Arlen, Jerome Kern, Johnny Mercer. Each one a master class in interpretive singing. The series became her legacy, the work she'd be remembered for long after people forgot her bebop recordings, the albums that would still be selling 60 years later, the definitive versions of the Great American Songbook that every subsequent singer would be measured against, all because Norman Granz had an idea and Ella Fitzgerald overcame her initial resistance to try something that terrified her. Years later, in interviews, Ella would talk about that first session. "I was so scared. I thought I was giving up what made me special. Turns out I was discovering what made me special in a different way." The jazz community's response was mixed initially. Some purists accused her of selling out, of abandoning real artistry for commercial success. But most recognized what she'd actually done, expanded the definition of what jazz singing could be. She made pop songs swing without changing them. One critic wrote, "That's harder than making them swing by deconstructing them." The Songbook series made Ella wealthy, made her famous beyond jazz circles, made her name synonymous with the Great American Songbook in a way no other singer achieved. But it almost didn't happen. That conversation in the dressing room at the Mocambo could have ended differently. Ella could have refused completely, insisted on staying in her comfort zone, never taken the risk. Instead, she said yes to one session, one song, one chance to discover whether her voice could do something she'd never asked it to do. "I Get a Kick Out of You," that first test recording, exists in the Capitol vaults. Historians who have heard both takes, the safe first one and the breakthrough second one, use them to teach about the difference between singing correctly and singing truthfully. The first take is Ella Fitzgerald being careful. The second is Ella Fitzgerald being brave. Norman Granz knew what he was asking was risky. Knew Ella might hate it, might refuse to continue, might damage their working relationship. But he also knew that great artists sometimes need to be pushed beyond their comfort zones to discover what they're truly capable of. She was the best jazz singer alive, Norman said in later interviews. But she was also the best singer, period. And these songs needed her more than bebop did. The legacy of the Songbook series extends beyond sales and awards. It fundamentally changed how the Great American Songbook was understood and preserved. Before Ella, these standards were just songs that various artists performed. After Ella, they were a catalog that deserved serious artistic attention. Every songwriter whose work she recorded experienced a renaissance. Cole Porter's songs were rediscovered by a new generation. Duke Ellington's compositions were heard as more than just jazz vehicles. Irving Berlin's catalog was preserved in definitive versions. Ella became the gold standard, the voice every songwriter wanted interpreting their work, the artist who proved that popular music could be art without being inaccessible. And it all started with her saying no, then reluctantly saying maybe, then nervously agreeing to try, then discovering that the risk was actually an opportunity. That's the real story of the Songbook series. Not that Ella Fitzgerald was great, everyone already knew that. But that she was brave enough to be great in a completely different way than she'd been before. The jazz singer who almost refused to sing pop standards. The artist who nearly said no to the idea that would define her career. The woman who took a risk that felt like losing herself and instead found new dimensions she didn't know existed. Norman Granz's crazy idea. Ella Fitzgerald's reluctant yes. One test session. One breakthrough take, and everything changed forever.